Hello and welcome to Run It Back on the Raptors Republic Network. I'm Zophie Shake here, joined by Cody Wiles. No Kyle Ramnarine this week. I know I've been promising the three of us will reunite. At this point, I am very much a liar, but it is life. It is difficult. I promise we will make it happen at some point. But in the meantime, Cody, how have you been, my friend? I don't think we've potted together in quite some time.
It has been a little bit. I'm doing great. It's nice to get to talk to you for a little bit. We're recording this right after the Trailblazers game, so a fun one there. The Raptors doing some funky things at the end, but we've all grown accustomed to that over the last week or so. But I'm doing great. How have you been?
I'm good. It's just been like again enjoying the basketball, and I think I when I say enjoying, I've been very much of a whatever happens happens. I'm going to live with the result. I think there's different people that have varying perspectives on that, Cody. But it's been good. It's been a bit of a fun week to kind of follow this team and everything that's going on. But speaking of that, after another 7 days for the Raptors, Cody, it's been either positive or negative, depending totally on what your rooting interests are. As the Raptors, they went 3-1 this week with wins over Washington, Philly, and Utah before capping off the last 7 days with a loss to Portland. That was just the Raptors' second loss in the month of March, which is kind of crazy. But hey, I guess they're taking advantage of the strength of schedule. The Raptors are now 24-44 on the season. For our Tankathon watchers, they remain in the seventh spot for lottery odds, half a game behind Philly and 4.5 games ahead of Chicago. And if you are for one of those people that is interested in the play-in, that also means the Raptors are 4.5 games behind Chicago for that 10th seed and that final play-in spot. But with that being said, we are going to get into our weekly takeaways off of that. Cody and I are going to chat about a very interesting quote from an anonymous NBA executive about the Raptors rebuilding process, break down our 905 report, and take a look at the week ahead. But before we get into it, as always, please make sure to leave a like on this video, comment down below what you thought of this week's action, and subscribe to the Raptors Republic YouTube channel so you don't miss out on any of the great content here. But with that being said, let's run it back. And Cody, overall, a 3-1 week for the Raptors. They won obviously more than they lost. They kind of, I guess you can say in air quotes, took care of business against the Trailblazers in that game that just happened. The rookies and G Leaguers have been getting plenty of opportunity. And so I just kind of want to know from you, what have you made of this stretch of play from the Raptors?
It's been wild, like I almost feel I said this on the last one. I feel like a proud dad. I'm sure you can feel the same way, like just watching the G Leaguers do their thing. And I find it we're probably finding more enjoyment in watching this,
Yeah.
watching these guys do their thing just because we followed them all year. We'll get into the Raptors 905 later in the episode as well, because they have not been doing so hot because shocker, the whole team's playing with the Raptors and they're playing well. Like at the end of the day, you said it off the top. You can't get mad at what's going on. Like the Raptors, especially if you're like pro tank, the Raptors are doing pretty much everything possible to try to lose games. They're resting dudes. They're running closing lineups. Like even tonight against the Portland Trailblazers, it ended up working. They're pulling Jakob out, and they're ran a closing lineup of Orlando Robinson, Colin Castleton, Ochai Baji at point guard, pretty much, AJ Lawson, and Jamison Battle. Um, that's what I take from this week is just it's funky. It's honestly Cooper Flag has these teams acting crazy, man. But
Yeah.
it's been fun to watch in the sense that they're playing well. The guys that we've been covering all year are doing their thing in the big leagues. Albeit against some shaky competition, with teams also resting. They're basically just playing other two-way G League guys for the most part. But and that vein, it's been fun. The games have been fun too. Like even I know it wasn't this week, but like that the Jacoby Walters shot against Orlando that kind of really started all of this stuff off. The Jamal Shed miss. And then even tonight, Orlando Robinson gets his three blocked by Matisse Thybulle, which was a crazy block. I don't even know how he did that. He just got back into their lineup as well. But it's been wonky, fun, and just a lot of tank talk.
Yeah, a lot of tank talk. But I guess that's what happens when you are a rebuilding team. You are in position to potentially get a high draft pick, which so it's fair. But I do think this game against Portland that we just watched, Cody, is interesting because like I think it's the first game in a while where everyone's happy. You had some really good minutes from your star players in Scotty Barnes. Jakob Poeltl was, again, incredibly impactful. Jakob Poeltl was a different player in this game, quite honestly, against Portland. Started with a corner three that was drawn up for him, and then he has that transition where he picks the ball and then goes coast to coast and slams it down.
Yep.
Like, Jakob Poeltl was on a different vibe against Portland. But look, you had those impactful minutes from those guys. You end up with the loss to help yourself in the lottery standings, and then you still get really positive games for the most part from these rookie and G League guys. I think the unfortunate part of all the quote unquote winning woes is what I've been calling it, is that like you're kind of missing out on what you're seeing from these players on the court because there's so much fixation over the standings and what's going on with it. So it was nice to have a game against Portland where, like, for the tank people, you get that loss after a competitive and entertaining game, like you said, Cody. But then for the other people, like you said, who have been watching some of these guys in the 905 get an opportunity and really make the most of it, it was a lot of fun. And I think it's a little gratifying. Like you said, Cody, we're like proud dads. The amount of times I've talked about how AJ Lawson loves to play above the rim and he has all these highlights in the G League. And then there's so many people in the fan base who haven't seen it, but then he's in the NBA. He's throwing it down in transition. And then we're just like, oh, look, we were talking about that. That's so much fun. So,
Yeah, going for 32 points, all this and all that.
yeah.
And say what you will, but all these guys are trying to play for they're none of these guys who are playing right now have financial have set themselves up financially for life
Yeah.
or anything for the most part. So these guys are all trying to play for their families and play for themselves. And to be honest, like they've all shown like they've all really popped. Like it's kind of scary how like good Jared like they had to send Jared Roden back down uh, because he was just impacting the game in so many ways. Again, like AJ Lawson is doing it on high volume. Orlando Robinson is still doing his thing. Like Colin Castleton, I've been really impressed by since he's come in. Jameson Battle almost ruined the tank tonight, hitting a big
Big
three,
shot.
and
Yeah.
he's played well. So honestly, all of these guys are showing different things. And I mean, if you think you can keep all these guys around, they're all doing their thing. Like the roster next year is pretty much locked in stone with you add in their 2 draft picks with Portland's pick, funny enough, in the second round as well. And depending on where this round 1 pick lands, the team is pretty locked in for next year. They should expect to see a turnaround. Maybe we'll get into that a little bit later as well with those quotes coming in. But it's been that's a different thought process as well. But the team's pretty locked in to me if they're going to keep all these guys around. I think they should sign Castleton for the rest of the season. That's just me.
Yeah, he's been a really fun player. I tweeted about it as well. He is so active on the offensive glass. He's like
Yep.
in the month of March, he's like I think 16th, and that was before this game in offensive rebounds. He was averaging around a 3, and then he just had like 7 or 8 against Portland as well. So that's obviously going to go up. But I wanted to ask you a question off of that, Cody, because I've really been thinking about this, and I'm kind of working on a written piece around this idea. But like the Raptors obviously are trying their best to draft as high as possible. I think that's very clear and evident in their decision making. Again, we saw it. They kind of learned their lesson last time, leaving RJ Barrett in too long against Orlando. They took out Jakob Poeltl with 4 minutes to spare, I believe, in the game against Portland. So like they're trying their best, regardless of whether they won those games or not. But at the same time, like you said, they have undrafted guys, late round rookies, like just guys who aren't even near that like type of like touted talent going out there competing, they're developing, they're like playing meaningful minutes and being impactful. And I think in like a weird way, it's showing that this organization that used to hang its hat on development and has said they want to get back to that is kind of doing it a little bit, regardless of where they draft a guy, what order, or if the guy's even drafted. They're showing that like, hey, we can find talent, we can get guys out there who are going to play their butts off and do good things for us. So like, I'm curious from your perspective, like, what do you I guess I don't even know what the question is. Like, what do you think matters more? Like, how have you seen that, like, that balancing act between, like, hey, we have to add this really high draft pick, but then maybe it's
Yeah.
not such an end all be all or nail in the coffin if they don't get a top 5 guy because they show they can find talent regardless.
Yeah, well, okay. Overall, at the end of the day, I've accepted that it's just going to be what it's going to be at. Like, if you finish 5th in the lottery, 6th in the lottery, 7th, you can move up or down. Like, I've just accepted that it's going to be what it's going to be, and that I'm happy to see these guys doing well. And I think that it's a good sign that this is happening. That they've bounced back. They found some real dudes. Like all these fringe guys could potentially make their way onto this team. I think in another year where the Raptors don't have the easiest schedule by
Yeah.
far, they would be losing games. It's just the fact that these guys are running out against other tanking teams like Washington twice, Utah twice, Philly, Portland. I don't think it's their fault specifically that they're winning games. They're trying everything they can. It's just a combination of an easy schedule, like a crazy easy schedule. The fringe guys are all hitting and doing well and popping and showing moments, and the rookies are even playing well. I think that's just what it is. And to be honest, I don't even think you can look at like Chicago. Like I don't think they're I don't think they're catching Chicago. at this point, and I don't think any team is catching like a Charlotte. I think it's just I think if you're going to be like scoreboard watching, Brooklyn, Philly, and Toronto. Those three are going to be battling for those positions. It was a good night for Toronto if you're a tanker. Toronto wins both those, or Toronto loses both those team wins. So it's I think it's just a mixture of they're all playing well. It's an easy schedule. In a normal year, they'd be losing more games.
Yeah, I think that's a fair way to put it. It is worth noting that again, like you said, easiest strength of schedule. So yes, these guys are balling out, but they are doing it against some like lackluster competition. And if we're talking about tanking teams, Utah, my God, that is filthy.
That's unstoppable.
It is filthy how they're tanking. Like Walker Kessler is active, but they just don't play the guy. They get fined for keeping Lauri Markkanen out for longer than he probably needed to be, and then he comes back and plays a first half and just doesn't play at all. Like they are, it's a master class in tanking by Utah. That is filthy behavior. If I think like anyone needs to be stopped, it's them. That's
Yeah,
crazy.
well, I want to ask you about, we're about to get into. I don't know if you want to do this
Yeah.
right now about, these multi-year rebuilds and all that. I don't know. I don't think you can just. I know that's been the way and the way OKC's done it, but I don't know, man. I don't know.
Yeah, okay, let's talk about it. Like what we're
Yeah,
alluding to, and Cody brought up, is basically there was an article recently released by ESPN. It was written by Tim Bontemps and Brian Windhorst, where they were talking about like the 7 lottery-bound teams this year and how they can potentially jumpstart their rebuild. And in that piece, Tim Bontemps noted that of the Raptors' approach, which we've seen is basically like this 2 to 3 year timeline where they're talking about they want to get competitive again, very likely next year. They worked in free agency to get Brandon Ingram, even bringing in guys like IQ and RJ to really like jumpstart this thing, and then hopefully adding a high pick to be kind of competitive again sooner rather than later. Like that strategy has been met with criticism across the league. And like, sorry, we have the quote here is basically there was another executive, an anonymous executive, that said that I don't like what Toronto is doing and that trying to flip it quick is dangerous. And then, again, that's from Tim Bontemps. He has a quote from an anonymous executive, and he talked about how there is skepticism for Toronto's approach. So I obviously have thoughts on this. I'm sure you do as well, Cody. But I'll just start with you. Like, what did you take from that quote, and what do you make of the whole idea of like Toronto's process maybe cutting corners or being too fast?
it's interesting. It's interesting. I guess I can't think of another example. Maybe you could help me here if of a team who's trying to like do what Toronto has done. Like I will say they're getting cute. Like they're trying to pull off a savvy move. I've been saying this all year. Like they're trying to be, savvy here, and it could work out. It could not. I can't recall a team who is really trying to do this. I guess like if the New Orleans Pelicans like are kind of doing a similar thing where just injuries have ravaged them, and you're just trying to bounce back up and quick. Um, like I was saying, I don't think the Washington Wizards have been bad for how long? The Charlotte Hornets have been bad for how long? And it's almost like you don't see a way out. I like what Toronto's doing. I trust their process. If the lottery works and they get a top 3 pick, then they're gonna look like geniuses, right? If they
Yeah.
fall out of the top 8, then they're gonna look like idiots, and then they're gonna try and bounce back. But if you look at the NBA, if you look at the Eastern Conference standings, I have no doubt in my mind if the Raptors had played everybody healthy or if they were just healthy all year and then were not resting guys towards the end, they could easily be the 7th seed. Like they could easily be at top of the play, and like they're just as good as the Atlanta Hawks. Um, Maybe not as good as the Pistons or Pacers, but I think next year if you add in BI and that mix as well, and depending if they get a top pick, to me you're competing for a 6 spot, a top 6 spot right off the bat. And I think uh, with the easy East, how it is right now, there's so many bad teams that somebody has to be good. Toronto can't tank another year anyways. So I guess you could quibble with, paying Emmanuel quickly and bringing in Brandon Ingram, but with where they're at right now, like they're too good. They're barely too good to take right now. So
Yeah.
uh, I like it. I think it's smart, especially in the Toronto market where nobody's coming to free agency. And even in the NBA landscape now, free agency isn't even a thing. It's just all about trades, getting those bird rights, and then signing them. So I I don't want to steal all the talking points. I'll let you go here, but I disagree with that NBA executive. Like, what do I know? But I I think in Toronto's case and how they're doing it, I support it.
Yeah, I mean, I share a similar sentiment, Cody. What I will say is like I understand why an executive would be anonymous for any story like this, but I think a part of why this executive is anonymous is because if you put your name on that, your fan base would rip you to shreds. Like
Yeah.
I just find it a little ridiculous to say that like trying to get good sooner is dangerous or a bad thing. I think that
Yeah.
should always be a positive thing, and then you should always look at it like I understand this idea of like cutting corners being a risk, but at no point is Toronto or anyone in this organization saying or thinking the Raptors are trying to go from cellar dweller to championship contender in a year. They're not making this insanely massive swing. They have taken some marginal risks, and admittedly, there are risks both financially and the on-court fit, but they're doing it to get to a competitive standpoint sooner, which, like you laid out, Cody, is very realistic for this
They're
team with
4
their core of players.
they're 4 games back in the play-in right now, and
Yeah,
they're not the Wizards, they're not the Hornets, they're not the Jazz.
the
Like,
Heat
come
have
on.
completely trailed off in the East. You said yourself, the Hawks are probably like, you don't know where they're going to be. They can jump those teams very easily,
The
and
Magic
then
don't have an
depending,
offense. The Magic
yeah,
can't do anything offensively. Yeah.
exactly. So like this team has aspirations to be competitive again, which like this idea of like being stuck in no man's land and mediocrity. I understand if you that you. I genuinely think that's only a complaint or should be a complaint when you're actually there and it's happening. Before the Raptors have even gotten back to being a playoff caliber team or a playing team, like why are we complaining about them being mediocre? We don't know what that team is going to be like, and that is almost always a step towards being a championship contender eventually. The Raptors are indicative of that when they were constantly in the playoff picture, and then they made that move for Kawhi Leonard. Like at no point has this been said that this Raptors roster right now is set in stone, and that's exactly what's going to be the core moving for the next 5, 6 years. Like I think it's very reasonable to look at it, and their rebuilding process is that we're going to get back to a competitive standpoint, evaluate our assets in a competitive environment. Again, see what a Scotty Barnes can do as the 1A, 1B guy in a playoff series. How does he fit with a Brandon Ingram in those high stakes situations? And then from there, evaluate how to get to a championship level team. And like, I don't see how that's necessarily that big of a risk where they're being dangerous with it. Like, I genuinely don't understand. And like
Yeah.
this same article, there's an executive that said they like what the Washington Wizards are doing. And like you said, Cody, they're a team that have been a perennial, like just bottom five team, just picking in the lottery. And granted, they've gotten some fun players. You can look at Alex R and see he kind of have a good NBA career for himself. Bob Carrington, Keyshawn George, Bilal Coulibaly, he's an awesome player that's really stepped up as well. They have fun guys, but at a certain point, there has to be a next step. Like the Charlotte Hornets, at a certain point, you kind of have to reach out of there. Like the Pistons, they finally did it. And we talked about them and just the ugliness of that franchise. And they finally did it when they took these marginal steps by adding vets, by getting a little bit better. And right now, nobody cares about their process or what's going on. They just care about the fact that they're finally being decent again. So
Yeah.
with the Raptors, I think that's kind of what it is. Like they're going to try to get back to being competitive. And for them, that was always going to be a 2, maybe 3 year process, not a 5 or 6 year process because of the guys they have on the roster, because of the contractual timelines. And so, yeah, I kind of want to call BS on this from this front office executive. I just don't think they're right.
Yeah, and I mean, even if it's all going to depend where their pick lands. Like again, they will look like geniuses if you roll into next season with Cooper Flag, Brandon Ingram, Scotty
Yeah.
Barnes, RJ Barrett, Emmanuel Quickly, Jakob Pertl, Grady Dick, Jacoby Walter, Jamal Shed, Jonathan Bobo. You're that's a team, man, and it's young. It's a young core, but you've been preaching this all year. They're not locked in. They have the contracts salary slot set up. They can trade, they can move in and out, they can see what works and what's not. Because to be honest, I don't know if I mean they also say in the article that they they might have to get fined for Brandon Ingram because this sprained ankle has been this is like the worst sprained ankle of all time. But I'd be shocked if he plays this season. I don't think it's going to happen. Seeing how they've completely have switched on the tanking switch, but it's yeah, I pretty much I think we're pretty aligned here that
Yeah.
there's a lot of ground that can be made up in the East as soon as next season. Like Atlanta is sold at the deadline, like they are getting worse. Again, like I they got a young team. They got a whole bunch of pieces that they can build forward. I don't even know they don't like we were just talking about. They don't even have the roster spots to even keep like tanking and tanking it out. Um, we'll see what happens with RJ Barrett. That's been his contract situation. He's the next
Yeah.
one out of everybody who needs a contract. I think there's a way they can bring him back. depending on how much money he wants or what his market looks like. But we'll see. This team's going to continue to change, especially if things don't work well. I mean, barbecue's numbers haven't been very good this season. There's been a lot of, moving parts around them, but when those three are on the court, they have the worst net rating out of any Raptors three-man uh I guess lineup,
Yeah.
which is kind of concerning. And RJ Barrett is the one that doesn't have the contract, right? They're already committed to Emmanuel quickly. So uh we'll see what happens. I disagree that even like we said, they've been able to hit on talent. So even if they do get the sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth pick, who knows what they get.
Yeah, like I just find it very fascinating, Cody. It's like, well, the Raptors shouldn't uh rush this. They should slow play it like how teams normally do, like you said, the Wizards or the Hornets, and like really accumulate and go from there. Well, then that in the same vein, you have those people complaining, being like, well, this team is too financially committed to these players to be a bottom barrel team. Like they need to be better than that when you're paying all these guys and you have all these expensive contracts. Well, when they're trying to, then the complaint is they're rushing into the process. Like I don't really get how you win here from that perspective based on these narratives. So that's why, like, yeah, I don't think it's all that dangerous. Again, that's the word I keep latching onto because I
Yeah.
think it makes a lot of sense based on their thinking, based on their process. And I go back to the point where like they're not trying to become a championship contender overnight. They're trying to become respectable, competitive, which, like you said, Cody, they are already somewhat close to being as things stand, anyways. So if you have those financial commitments, if you have that desire to again be better, which I think as fans, it is exciting to get a top draft pick. Don't get me wrong, but at the same time, like have some respect for the game of basketball and fandom and
Yeah.
being a good basketball team.
At the end of the day, they're building through the middle. And
Yeah,
there's multiple ways to put together a team. They're building through the middle. They got better by getting Brandon Ingram. They like that was such a W. Like that was a W trade. Like I don't know what to
yeah,
say. Like that was that they acquired him for 50 cents on the dollar or whatever you want to say, and they got better. And being bad this year is going to help them be better next year. And I think there's lots of room for them to make up. I can already see it. They're going to be everybody's pick for the over on their season total. They're going to be the sexy jump up pick from lottery team to playoff team. Like it's going to be. I can see it now, and because they got the all-star level, they got you could argue three all-star caliber players, like maybe two and a half with just RJ Barrett's offense and not the defense. But
yeah, fair.
Scotty Barnes and Brandon Ingram can make an all-star team. Barrett offensively has been great, so they got a good team. And Jakob Poeltl is essential to them winning. Like they're 3-11 without him this season, and 7-39 without him over the past two seasons. I'll be interested to see if they pull the Jakob Poeltl switch, if they just shut him down at some point. But because, like you said, if he's hitting quarter threes and going coast to
Oh my
coast
god.
and going coast to coast like butter on my toast, I don't think we can.
He got the Kawhi bounce on the three too. Like that was crazy. It wasn't the fact that he just took it and hit it. It's the fact that they drew it up for him. Like in this same game, you had against Portland, you had Jakob Poeltl have a drawn up three that he took and made, and then you had Garrett Temple ending the first quarter with isolation, like fade away baseline jumper. What a wacky time it is for the Raptors,
Yeah,
Cody.
and
But yeah, I don't
Allen
know.
Robinson had no chance to tie
Oh
things up
yeah,
at
game
the
winner.
buzzer. It was just, yeah, funny stuff going on. Funny stuff going
Yeah.
on.
But hey, like you said, it's all gonna not all of it, but a lot of it will just come down to where the Raptors end up drafting. They will need some luck to end up with a high pick, is what it's kind of like panning out to be. But hey, I will say the last time the Raptors had the seventh overall odds, they ended up jumping up to fourth. And who do they get? Scotty Barnes. So you
Exactly.
just never know what's possible with this kind of stuff. I still have a lot of faith in this front office and their development, their scouting to find talent regardless of where they draft. I know some people will be disappointed if they don't have a top 4 or 5 pick, and that's fair enough. But I think it's not all doom and gloom. And I think based on the Raptors strategy, like you said, Cody, building through the middle, I have faith that they can figure it out, at least to get to that point. Getting to championship contender, that's a long ways away, I think, still. And we're going to have to see how that goes. But to get back to the middle, I think they have a very clear pathway to that moving forward. And if there's any team that knows how to build through the middle, it's the Toronto Raptors. We've literally seen them with this front office do it before. But with that being said, let us know down below in the comments. Like, do you buy this concern from this anonymous executive or this skepticism from around the league that the Raptors are potentially going too fast with the rebuild, maybe cutting corners or risking their success by doing this? Or do you kind of like air with me and Cody where you don't buy it and you think they have a plan? Or like I said, I just genuinely think it's a bit of a BS comment from an anonymous executive because I think the Raptors are making a lot of sense in what they're doing. But let us know in the comments below. But with that being said, Cody, let's get into our bread and butter, the 905 report. Now, we are back to bring you the best 905 coverage there is. And unfortunately, been a bit of a struggle for the junior dinos because their losing ways have not come to an end. The 905 only had one game this week, but it unfortunately was a loss that extended their league worst losing streak to 10 consecutive games. They hosted the Windy City Bulls, and a couple of familiar faces. Canadian Emmanuel Miller was there. It was 905 and Canada basketball collab night, which is kind of cool. So Emmanuel Miller was there. Obviously, the Raptors 905 have a couple of Canadians, and former 905er Javon Freeman Liberty was in town. He was incredible in that game. Shout out to him. He had a triple double. And the 905 lost 128 to 126, despite trailing by as many as 18 points in that game. And we'll touch on that in a second. But a couple of strong performances. If you haven't checked out the highlights, please go and do. Kennedy Chandler balled out off the bench. He had 29 points. He hit a massive three to tie up the game in the final 30 seconds. But ultimately, however, the 905's playoff hopes seem to be dwindling away, Cody, as that, like I said, losing streak hits 10. They're now 12 and 16. They're 13th in the East. They just lost to the Windy City Bulls, who were last in the Eastern Conference. It's not looking all too pretty. So, Cody, what do you think is going on? Do you have any kind of an explanation for this?
It's quite literally just their whole they don't have their team. I think I wish I could provide more, but they just don't have the players when all the rookies like Jacoby Walter, Jamal Shedd, Jameson Battle, Jonathan Mobo are up at the NBA. And now AJ Lawson, Jared Roden, Orlando Robinson, their two-way guys are up. Even 10-day Colin Castleton had played one game with the 905. They almost completed a comeback. Similar, I was at that game, and Colin Castleton was great in that G League debut. They were down by, I want to say, 24 heading into the fourth, and they brought it within 2, and they had a chance to win it at the end, but just couldn't quite get there. Over Shamshay is hurt as well, and even though Frank Kaminsky has been quietly removed from the team, he's not even with the 905 anymore, per Blake Murphy. So they Dylan Dessou has been shut down. The whole team is gone. They've lost 10 straight. They haven't won since February 12th. They've lost 12 of their last 13. It's just no disrespect to players like Tyler Perry, Tyree Key, Quincy Guerrier, who Gary's showing things. Him and Eugene Marie continue to do things and continue to try to prop up this the 905 team along with Evan Gilliard and Kennedy Chandler, like you mentioned. But players like Perry, Key, Guerrier, even Gilliard to some degree at the start of the year, these guys were completely out of the rotation when everybody was down and healthy and playing. And now they're all three in starting lineups and starting games and in closing lineups. It's just they have a much more average G League team now. I wouldn't even say the G League team is bad. It's just they've gotten so close in so many of these last couple of games, and they just need that one or two, better players to close it out and win. But it's just that's just all it is. They just don't have the talent that they did at the start of the year, because if they had everybody playing, this team, the 905 are beating the Wizards and the Jazz. I'm sure they can win a G League championship. So, it's just nobody's playing for them. So it's been tough to evaluate anything.
Yeah, it's been a weird set of circumstances, Cody. Like you mentioned, a lot of guys have been in and out and moving. Like you said, if they had one or two more players potentially, a lot of this would have looked different. In this game against the Windy City Bulls, I was there. They had Jared Roden in that game. He was back down. And like you said, people are kind of speculating it's because he's too good with the Raptors. He had 25 and 12 against Philly. There has been some notes, and I think Blake was the first one to say it, that he only got 12 NBA games on the two-way slot, and he's already used 5 of them. So they are spreading it out a little bit. But in that game against the Bulls in the G League, he had 26 points through 3 quarters. He unfortunately tweaked his ankle, and then he left in the third quarter. He didn't return. So then it was all of a sudden then that's another guy you have to fill in and step up for. Tyree Key kind of stepped up for him. And like you said, he's a good player. He was actually very good defensively in that game, and I wrote about it in my recap. But just offensively, he doesn't have that same punch and firepower that a Jared Roden has, right? So you're kind of playing from behind. Frank Kaminsky, you mentioned it. It's been confirmed by the team that he's having a procedure on his knee, so he's done for the season. He's also expecting with his wife, by the way. So Frank, congratulations. We hope you have speedy recovery. But good news there on that front, at least. But yeah, so you lose out on another guy who was just your starting center, a pillar, especially with Ulrich Shamshay out. And all of that has been kind of underscored by this idea of this team not being able to consistently put out a strong effort on the floor. If I know you've probably heard this from head coach Drew Jones, Cody, and God knows I have, when he says we need them to play a full 48 minutes. It's just that constant, like I've called it his mantra, which is like full 48 minutes. He says that all the time. And in that game against the Bulls, he called a timeout in less than 60 seconds because the 905 had made a couple bad plays and he just ripped into them. And he said that, like, we cannot ease into this game. Our slow starts have what it costed us. And you said it, Cody. They have been close in some of these games after trailing by as many as 20 points. They've made comebacks. They've rallied in the second half of games. I looked at the numbers during this losing streak. Their average margin of defeat is only like 6.9 points. They've lost most of those games by single digits, right? They've been in so many of them. But it's the fact that they often start slow against the Bulls. 20 points in the first 4 minutes, and then you have to catch up from that point. And eventually you get close, but like it's not always going to go your way. And unfortunately, when your talent necessarily isn't there either when it comes to the 905, it hasn't gone their way. And like it's just like they're in these games, their spirits are high based on what the players are telling us. But then at the same time, it's like, holy crap, how many times can we just keep doing this where we're close and we're there and we're still just losing?
Yeah, it's funny at the start of the year, Drew has said the same thing multiple times. Towards the start of the year and coming into the regular season, they were coming out firing and they were starting hot, but it's just they would trail off in the fourth quarter. And now recently, over this like probably 10-game losing streak and 12 of the last 13, whatever, it's been they're starting not so good and they're trailing heading into the break or into the fourth quarter, and they're battling back and they're being resilient, but just in too deep of a hole. So they failed to have played all 4 quarters all year. I think I like what Drew's done, to be honest, even though this is not a good reflection. Uh, I think his team's been stripped of talent, and I think he's a player. I think the players like playing for him. He's an intense guy for sure. I think he's a good coach. I think he's done good things. And I'm excited to see what happens next year because like you said, before the stretch they were top of the Eastern Conference, and then the Raptors decided to pull the plug and call up all the 905 guys, and then that tanked the 905 season. I don't know if they're not technically officially eliminated, but they're like 4 games back with 6 games remaining. There's a whole bunch of teams ahead of them as well that could fight for it. It's pretty much RIP for the 905 season, but it was fun when they were all playing, when all the healthy guys were there. But it's we might not be having too many. I mean, I guess we'll have 2 more 905
2
reports,
more home games,
and then 2 more 905 reports on here, and then it's game over. But there's only a handful of home games as well, so it's been a fun season, I will say.
Yeah, I'm with you, Cody. Like, it's been a really fun season. I think the word I want to use, it's been a meaningful season because, like you said, a lot of these guys who have spent time in the G League have been able to step up and get NBA opportunities, which is kind of the point of this program. It's, again, being a pillar of the Raptors development system. I talked to Drew about that, and I think I'm going to save a bit of what he said, like, for that piece that I'm hopefully writing in the coming days about this whole, like, balancing act when it comes to talent. But it's just these guys have like worked their butts off, like really, like you said, with players coming in and out, with injuries, with this like now like losing stretch and tough like games where they're kind of in and battling again, a lot of resiliency. But the unfortunate reality is like Drew told me, he's like, this is basically what their identity has become. Their identity, and sometimes we like using that word as like in a good way, and we do, but sometimes it also means stuff like this. Like the 905's identity right now is a team that starts slow, they get behind, they scrap back, and unfortunately, they're not winning those games right now. Hopefully, you can kind of see what they can do during the offseason, whether it's Drew and his coaching staff working on things and who's going to come back and how it's going to go. But it's been generally positive, especially if you look at during the tip-off tournament, and this team, I think, won like all of 5 games or something throughout their first 14, 15, for them to make the leap that they did midway through, for them to bring in some of the rookies from the NBA and have them really contribute, I think says a lot about what this coaching staff can do. And like you said, they were kind of stripped of that because I think for a big part of this season, not that they were banking on it, but there was probably very clearly a plan of those young guys playing a lot with the 905, both entering the season and midway through. And then once the Raptors tanking situation went the way it did, like all of that kind of just went to the wayside. And the priority was kind of bring them up to the NBA level, which unfortunately impacted the 905 negatively, but we still got plenty of positives out of it. And a couple more games to go, Cody. 2 more home games. I think, like you said, 6 games left. We'll obviously be covering and reporting on it all, but it's been really fun.
Hey, maybe there'll be some playoff hoops next year, but there's more winning this year. So honestly, it was fun to get to talk to the guys that I've been get to talk to. Got to get to know Drew a little bit this season as well. So it's it's shaked out how it's going to be. Obviously, it's fun to see those guys now get NBA minutes and NBA runs. So that's another fun part about the whole thing. But yeah, another season in the dust, and the Raptor season is getting real close here. I believe they have 14 games left. So it's you blink and you miss it. It's March 16th as of recording. So can't believe that.
Yeah, it's coming and going fast, but I think we'll save our like closing thoughts, I guess, on the season and the players that we like talking to and what we learned like for those final couple shows. But in the meantime, let's head back to talk about the NBA Raptors, looking at the schedule ahead. And Cody, the Raptors do not get a lot of time to kind of rest after their loss. They get right back to action. They're taking on the Phoenix Suns tomorrow, on Monday rather, in the second night of a back-to-back, before they visit the Red Hot Warriors on Thursday. I believe the Warriors at the time of recording have won 7 in a row. The Jimmy, Steph, Draymond connection seems to be working. And then the Raptors take on the ghost of the San Antonio Spurs on Sunday. No Wemby, no De'Aaron Fox, as he's out for the season with injury as well. So who knows what we'll see against this Raptors team. Who knows what shenanigans go into play with both sides when it comes to tanking and whatnot. It seems like the Spurs are in a pretty good spot to maybe get a high lottery pick of their own. Terrifying prospect, thinking about Wembanyama with another talented draft pick, with Stephon Castle, with De'Aaron Fox. Holy crap, the Spurs. But Cody, with that being said, like, what are you looking for from the Raptors going into this week?
Yeah, just keep it on, keep it on. Let's continue to see what these guys got. It's tough to really project because I don't know who's going to be in the lineup. I don't know who's going to be resting one night. I don't know. I know the main guys were hurt. Like I know Grady isn't going to be. I mean, Grady might not even play the rest of the year based on how
Yeah.
how they're operating. If they want to keep it, keep it close to the vest. Jacoby Walter probably still out. So I guess we'll continue to see these 905ers and these G Leaguers do their thing. I guess just continue to see who pops off, who continues to look good. I guess continue to evaluate Scotty because he is going to be playing. I would assume the rest of the season. He needs to play 12 of the last 14 to be eligible for All NBA and DPOY and all of that shenanigans stuff. So continue to evaluate him. I'm excited for tomorrow's game against Phoenix because it's a battle of great defense. In the Toronto Raptors we haven't mentioned it, the best defense since mid-January, the
Yeah.
best defensive rating that's propelled a lot of this winning. And maybe the numbers have been inflated because they're playing, the Wizards twice, the Jazz twice, the Sixers like we talked about. But that's been the Suns' kryptonite all year is the defense. They have the 27th best defensive rating. They're struggling in their own right. They're 6-15 since February 1st, but they want to win. The Raps, these next couple of games will be playing teams that want to win. So maybe a losing streak starts here. I mean, I guess I'm pro tank now. Like at this point, you got to be pro. I think you got to be pro tank. So maybe we see a 3 or 4 game losing streak pop up here. But I guess that's all. Continue to see what the guys look like, and hopefully it comes in close losses.
Yeah, I think if you're gonna see a couple losses pile up, this is the part of the schedule where you're probably gonna see it. They have the Pistons coming up still, I think later on, which is another team that they probably, I guess, it makes sense for them to lose to. The Pistons are competitive right now, kind of in that playoff mix. But like you said, the Suns are trying to win. The Warriors very much so are trying to win. We don't know what it is with the Spurs, but like I guess my like thought going into week is like you kind of did in a bad way when the Raptors took advantage of the schedule by winning too many games. Try to take advantage of the schedule here again, but in the way that you actually intended, if that makes sense. Like against the Suns and the Spurs, I think you can play more of the young guys and you can develop against like Jonathan Mobo. He's back, he's healthy again from his nose fracture. He didn't play against Portland, which I found interesting, but like I could see him really taking a lot from the defensive assignments against Phoenix, whether he's doing stuff on the perimeter against a Kevin Durant, a Devin Booker, Bradley Beal, what have you. I think that could be a great development for him. Same with a guy like Jamal Shead on offense, being able to play against those guys, kind of be a table setter. He had a very fun game as well against the Portland Trailblazers. So I think against those guys, against the Spurs, who are probably going to be trying to lose that game as well, like you can continue doing what you've been doing for the most part, is giving a lot of that opportunity to young guys. But then a game against the Warriors, a very good team right now who is trying to win, like I don't think they need to be as like just worried about they're gonna have to lose or whatnot. Like play Scotty a bit more, play Yak a bit more. Obviously, if you think it's getting too close to you're gonna win that game and you want to pull all your shenanigans and like as people have been saying, pull those levers, like go ahead. But I think those games are important. Like Scotty being able to break down a defense that's led by Draymond Green, a very good player. Again, Jimmy Butler's going to be there doing stuff, wreaking havoc around the perimeter with a Steph Curry and what they can do together now. Like I think figuring out how to play against those guys is meaningful for RJ, IQ, Scotty, like Yak and those guys. And if there's going to be a game this season down the stretch where we see those guys together again, finally, because they've been all like alternating rests and whatnot, like I think that would be the game against the Warriors. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm kind of curious if they actually go and take that game a bit more quote unquote seriously and what we get from it. But like again, take advantage of the schedule, how you see fit. The team after this game against Portland, they finally accomplished what they were looking to do, a good competitive game with development, but also a loss. So let's see how they kind of treat it going forward.
Yep. Can't agree more. It's that's about the only thing you can really look at because uh that's just kind of it's been shoehorned in. We don't know who's playing, don't know who's not going to play. So let's just enjoy it. Let's just enjoy it. Hopefully we won't be talking tank for at any point in the next like 3, 4, 5 years. So
I hope so.
and I think that's the whole point. That's why they've been dipping down these past couple of years to hopefully get back up. So hopefully all this tanking stuff will be in the past.
Yeah, I'm gonna be so excited not to have to like look at injury reports so detailed and like be fixated on them moving forward. Hopefully next season, like it's gotten to the point where when the Raptors tweet out an injury report, it's too big for them to tweet it. They have to put a screenshot of a picture. Like that's how bad it's gotten.
Yeah, that's the
Like
PR account has to tweet that out. Yeah.
yeah. Oh my god, it is bad. It's also like it's just getting weird at this point. Like you don't know exactly what injuries are. Like you said, Brian Windhorst, he joked about like Brandon Ingram having the worst ankle sprain ever. And like I know Shamshi is out for the season, like with he had that MCL tear, but I swear to God, pregame he was warming up. There was like a picture of him online of him warming up in pregame. So like I guess maybe it wasn't a full tear that required surgery.
It was a
Yeah,
partial tear for sure. It was
yeah.
100% a partial tear. So
Okay, yeah, fair enough. But I was just like, but to my point, it's so hard to keep track of everything with all the different little injuries going around and about. But yeah, like I'm excited. Hopefully next season they can be healthier. They can kind of build some continuity and go from there. With that being said, let us know in the comments down below. What are you looking forward to from the Raptors this week? Again, they play the Suns tomorrow on Monday. They play the Warriors after that and the Spurs to end the week. So let us know in the comments below. But Cody, that'll do it for us this week on Run It Back. We want to thank everyone for tuning in. Hopefully, you're caught up on everything when it comes to Raptors basketball action. And until next time, please make sure to like this video, to subscribe to the Raptors Republic YouTube channel so you don't miss out on any of the great content. Cody had an AJ Lawson breakdown video not too long ago about his time in the 905, and obviously AJ's been hooping up with the big club, so be sure to check that out. I did a breakdown video of Jonathan Mobile's time in the 905 not that long ago as well, so please be sure to check that out. Leave a comment below, let us know what you think. But with that being said, let's all have a great week, watch some fun basketball. For myself and Cody, we'll be back later to Run It Back. Peace.